Hi, my name is Lyle Murphy. I'm the founder of the Alternative to Med Center. Today we're going to be talking about Kratom, sometimes pronounced Kratom. And the first question is, what is Kratom? Well, Kratom is a tree that grows in Indonesian countries and in Thailand, Malaysia. And it is an extract or a crushed up version of the leaf that is ingested. Next question, what is Kratom used for? In America, people often use it for an alternative to opiates. So it's sort of an opiate analog in many ways. It's not nearly as addictive as, let's say, oxycodone. And for people that are struggling with addiction, oftentimes they find this to be an alternative and helps abate some of the cravings that go along with not doing opiates, so they can, stay sober. But it's also used for pain. It's also used for helping with mood, and some people take a whole lot of it and feel very kind of anesthetized, similar to being on a sedative or an opiate. Next question, is Kratom considered a controlled substance? In America, not yet. It is pretty available on the internet, certain coffee shops and head shops where they sell tobacco and other pipes and those sorts of things. There are countries that it is illegal in, such as Russia and other countries. I know when I was in Russia, I actually asked about Kratom and no one had any idea what that was. And I found out later that it is not legal there. Next question, does Kratom affect mood? It certainly does. That's largely why people take it, because it has a mood-altering effect. I think generally what people are looking for here is, there's kind of a bigger physiology here that people who are naturally drawn to opiates, that have sort of a biochemical, addictive biochemistry, if you will, that pulls them towards opiates. Generally, what you're looking at here is endorphin levels. Endorphins they're a bit of a feel-good neurochemical, but not like the same as dopamine. Endorphins are your pain chemicals. So when you're doing a lot of exercise, like running or something like high impact, you get endorphins because that helps you not feel the pain and the stress that you're putting on your body. And that has a sort of a mood elevating effect. But endorphins also help you block emotional transference. So sort of uniquely, really truly uniquely, as mammals, anything that has a mammillary gland also has a limbic area to their brain. Different sizes and different species. Ours is particularly robust, and we have the ability, and other mammals do as well, to be able to perceive at a distance the possibility of a bonding love experience that will help us survive and help nurture us, or if it's a threat. So at a distance, I can tell whether someone is aggressive and hostile, like if they're in the car next to me and have road rage, I can feel that in my own nervous system. And it's much different than if that person in the car next to me is attracted to me and wants to get my phone number and is smiling and blowing kisses. There's a whole different open loop nervous system that is responding to emotional input that doesn't actually require like touching, which is a closed loop. It's an open loop. And it is part of our survival and part of our emotional makeup. Well, there are neurochemicals that accentuate that, and there's also neurochemicals that diminish it. So one of the things that diminishes it is endorphins. So people who are low endorphins tend to overfeel emotional input from their environment. So those type of people are drawn towards substances that help shut that down. Like some of our greatest artists, like Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson, they have genetically geared or otherwise have the ability to feel more than the average person. That makes them great artists, but it also makes them very susceptible to being overstimulated, especially when you get famous and everybody's putting their attention on you. When you already feel too much, not too much, but when you feel a lot already, that may be overload. So Kratom is in that sort of niche where certain people use it to cope with their emotional experience of the world. So in low doses, it may have a stimulant effect, may make a person feel more energetic, may help with minor pain alleviation, and at higher doses, it can make you very sleepy, put you in a dreamlike state, similar to how opium would work. Next question, is kratom hard on the liver? If you take a lot of it, there are studies that show that megadosing with kratom can be very hard on your liver. I didn't actually find anything that shows that it is hard on the liver in low doses, but I don't know that there's actually a lot of studies out there on low dose long-term and how it affects your liver. Next question, does kratom cause depression? I mean, really anything that's spending your natural underlying neurochemistry can result in depletion. It's not producing any neurochemicals. It's sort of altering the way that the neurochemicals there are received. And that skewing of things can cause a more long-term effect of depression. But actually, I think people use it more to help alleviate depression. And I'm not exactly clear on the long-term sustainability of that. I tend to suspect that, so there's other ways to treat these kind of things. And I'm just going to glance here at the question, see if there's anything that touches on that. Not really, so I'll get into that now. So a lot of the reasons why people use opiates, I mean, one of them is genetic. People have different genetic gearings for how much endorphin levels that they produce. Another reason is trauma. Trauma will affect your endorphin levels, especially if it's a long sustained trauma where you believe that your life is in danger, and especially more so at a young age, because how we adapt and how we survive is it's chipping away at our endorphin levels, and that has the byproduct of us then feeling more, because feeling more and being able to perceive threats at a distance is what helps us survive. So it's literally an evolutionary mechanism, depleting our endorphins in a PTS state that can get us into a place where we crave opiates and crave other things that are going to help buffer the amount of emotion we're picking up off other people. But there's ways to address these things on a biophysical level that are probably a lot more sustainable than kratom. Strangely enough, if you do have a genetic disposition and you combine that with something like eating inflammatory foods. So if you eat inflammatory foods and you have an inflammatory response in your gut, you are dumping endorphins out into your system to try to block the amount of pain that would come from that swelling in your gut and other places. So those inflammatory food combinations, and this isn't just academic. I've seen this many times over and over, where the opiate user has a really bad diet. They're eating a lot of sugar. They're especially combining that sugar with things like, ice cream would be a bad example, or a good example rather, of bad food combining, where you're taking a fat that takes 4 to 8 hours to digest and mixing it with a sugar that takes maybe 30 minutes to up to an hour to digest. So that sugar then staying in your gut until all of the fat is emulsified for 4 to 8 hours causes basically fermentation, just like what you'd have with beer. Anybody that's brewed beer before, which is not me, but knows that those things that you put it in, they build up pressure inside the fermentation tanks. So that's what's happening in your gut. Well, if that's happening in your gut and you're using up all your endorphins, what do you think is going to happen to your emotional state? Yeah, you're going to be low endorphins, you're going to overfeel. So if you already have a genetic gearing to being low endorphins and you tandem that with bad food combining, it can be a very straightforward setup for having a low endorphin state that's going to create an addictive biochemistry towards opiates or towards kratom. So I've seen people who have changed their diet and who have also gone to the gym and started exercising and building their endorphins more naturally, that have started eating protein-based foods, whether they're vegan, whether they're vegetarian, or whether they're meat eaters, just upping the level of proteins that are then available to be precursors to making endorphins. People that have taken themselves out of highly charged emotional environments and created a space around them energetically where people are just not running up into their space emotionally and overstimulating them, whether that's by a change in occupation or a change in location in the home, do long-term highly successful over getting off of kratom, getting off of opiates, and being stable and being happy and comfortable with their emotional experience. Whereas people who are not attending to that, they're not getting it. And the long-term use of kratom is just sort of band-aiding a situation that could be addressed, I believe, in other ways. Does kratom affect serotonin levels? Well, research has shown that the same receptors involved in where antipsychotics are producing an effect and where antidepressants are producing effect are being produced by kratom, namely the D2 dopamine receptor and a couple of the serotonin 5-HT receptors, and also the alpha-2 adrenergic receptors, which speak to kratom having an antipsychotic and a serotonergic effect. What are the side effects of kratom is the last question. Well, the main thing for me that I've seen is addiction. It may be a lesser addiction, obviously, than opiates, but it still is something that when people are trying to get away from kratom, they have a pretty rough go of it. And for those people, I would suggest, again, getting exercise. The type of exercise that actually is like weightlifting, that breaks muscle tissue. The way that muscle tissue actually duplicates itself in many ways is the fibers that, if there's one fiber, you put stress on it, it splits into 2 muscle fibers, and then that's how you build muscle mass. Well, that same process also releases endorphins. Taking a substance like DLPA, D-L-phenylalanine, is a... sorry, we have an ambulance going by. DLPA is a precursor for endorphins. So DLPA, if somebody's really, really super anxious, though, it may be overstimulating to their anxiety. The dosage range for that would be probably about 1,000 to 1,500, depending on how large you are. If you're a very large guy, maybe 2,000, and that should be taken in the morning. Stopping smoking, for some reason, helps with endorphin levels. It may be that the arsenic, we suspect that the arsenic in cigarettes can be depleting towards endorphin synthesis. And strangely enough, in places like where we're at in Sedona, where there is a higher concentration of arsenic in the water, people are known to be highly sensitive. I don't know if there's a correlation there, but we've seen higher arsenic levels on people's metal chelation tests that also correlate with having that endorphin deficient persona. The main thing, and a lot of people don't hear this, but if you really want to master this, you've got to work on the inflammatory foods. Trace down any sort of food allergies you might have, and look for combinations of foods where you're combining a starch, a simple sugar, or a carbohydrate with a protein or a fat. Those things do not pair well together as far as digestion. It's okay to eat simple carbohydrates with alone. It's okay to eat simple carbohydrates with greens. It's okay to eat proteins with greens or proteins alone, but proteins with fats, simple carbohydrates with proteins or fats are too far off the spectrum. If you want to know more about food combining, look up the Optimum Health Institute and read some of their information about food combining. They actually have a chart that you can download that helps you understand which foods go together well and which ones do not. You might have to modify it if you're a meat eater because they are vegetarian sort of based. So where they're saying like avocados and things like that as far as proteins, you can just sort of put meats and whatever proteins you like to eat in that spot, and it'll all make sense. All right, well, I know there's a lot to talk about with kratom. There is, I don't know how many of our viewers are Reddit sort of people, but there is a Reddit group for kratom. A lot of the people in there have a lot of deep knowledge about kratom and their experience with it. Otherwise, that is the end of our questions. I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and please like and subscribe to our channel if you would, and otherwise have a great evening or day. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. For information about Alternative to Med Center, give us a call at 888-984-9667.